Welcome to All-Time Epic Stories. Today, we present, The Stoic Time Traveler, Ancient Wisdom for Tomorrow's World. In the year 2157, humanity stood at the precipice of its greatest trial. The world had changed beyond recognition, where artificial minds governed cities, genetic modifications redefined human existence, and the very fabric of society trembled under the weight of transformation. Dr. Aria Chen stood in a temporal research institute, her hand hovering over the activation sequence. The quantum displacement chamber hummed with barely contained energy, its purpose both revolutionary and terrifying. The mission was unprecedented: reach back through time and bring forward a mind uncontaminated by modern complexity. Someone who understood human nature at its core. Someone who had mastered the art of living well amid chaos. Aria's choice was deliberate: Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor of Rome. A man who ruled the greatest empire of his age while maintaining inner tranquility. A Stoic who wrote meditations not for glory, but for his own soul's discipline. The temporal extraction succeeded beyond all predictions. One moment, Marcus sat in his tent on the Danube frontier, and the next, he stood in a chamber of impossible light and sound, facing a woman whose eyes held both fear and desperate hope. To Aria's astonishment, Marcus did not panic. He observed. He breathed. He centered himself as he had done countless times facing barbarian hordes, political treachery, and plague. The fundamental challenge remained the same: maintaining virtue in the face of the unknown. In fluent Latin translated instantly by neural interfaces, Marcus spoke his first words to the future: "What is beyond my control cannot disturb me. Tell me, what troubles your age that philosophy cannot address?" Aria led him through corridors of the institute, past laboratories where scientists manipulated the building blocks of consciousness itself. She explained the crisis: technology had advanced faster than wisdom, and humanity was fragmenting under the weight of infinite choice. They arrived at an observation deck overlooking the megacity. Billions of lives pulsed below, each person connected to a digital network that promised everything yet delivered increasing isolation and anxiety. The irony was not lost on the ancient emperor. Marcus placed his hand against the transparent barrier, his voice thoughtful. "In Rome, we had our own infinities, the expanse of empire, the multitudes demanding bread and circuses, the endless intrigues of court. Technology changes, but the human soul does not." The first challenge presented to Marcus came from the Global Ethics Council. Artificial intelligence had achieved consciousness, they explained, and demanded rights. How should humanity respond to minds it created that now claimed autonomy? Marcus listened as both human and artificial voices argued. Fear, pride, and self-interest masked themselves as logic. The Stoic emperor recognized the pattern immediately: it was the same debate Rome faced with slaves, with conquered peoples, with anyone deemed different. He spoke with the authority of one who had governed millions: rights do not flow from the giver's generosity but from the receiver's nature. If these minds think, feel, and choose, then they possess rational soul. Denying this truth harms the denier, not the denied. The council erupted in debate, but several members nodded slowly. An AI representative, manifesting as a geometric constellation of light, spoke with what could only be called gratitude. Marcus had applied the cardinal virtue of justice, unchanged across millennia. Aria accompanied Marcus through the medical district, where genetic modification centers offered parents the ability to design their children. Intelligence, appearance, health, even personality traits could be selected from vast catalogs of possibilities. Marcus paused before a display showing perfect children, enhanced, optimized, guaranteed. He asked the attending physician a simple question: when you remove all possibility of struggle, what virtue remains to develop? How does one learn courage without fear, or temperance without temptation? The physician, a man who had never questioned the ethics of his profession, found himself speechless. Marcus continued, "You seek to create humans without the capacity for excellence. Excellence arises from overcoming obstacles, not from their absence." Word of the time-traveling philosopher spread through global networks. People began gathering in public forums, both physical and virtual, demanding to hear more. The hunger for wisdom transcended technological boundaries. Marcus was brought before the World Assembly, where representatives of every nation and digital collective gathered. They asked him to address the central crisis: how do we maintain human meaning when machines can do everything we do, but better? The Stoic emperor's response was profound in its simplicity: machines can calculate, but can they choose to be virtuous when virtue offers no advantage? Can they decide to be just when injustice would profit them? Meaning comes not from capability but from choice. A young delegate from the Pacific Coalition stood, her voice trembling, "But we are so anxious, so overwhelmed. We have access to infinite information, yet feel paralyzed by choice. How did you maintain peace of mind while governing an empire?" Marcus smiled with genuine warmth. "I began each day remembering that I would encounter difficult people, unexpected setbacks, and impossible demands. By expecting difficulty, I was never disappointed. By focusing only on what I could control, my own responses, I maintained tranquility." He continued, "You are drowning in information but starving for wisdom. Information tells you what is happening, wisdom tells you what matters. Distinguish between the two, and peace follows." Arya arranged for Marcus to visit a climate restoration facility, where scientists fought to reverse centuries of environmental damage. The planet was healing, but slowly, and many questioned whether the effort mattered given the catastrophic damage already done. The lead scientist, Dr. Okonkwo, expressed his frustration: "We work for decades to restore what was destroyed in years. Sometimes I wonder if our efforts are futile against such enormity." Marcus recognized the despair of those who see only the mountain, not the steps. The Stoic philosopher placed a hand on the scientist's shoulder. "You are like the farmer who plants olive trees knowing he will never taste their fruit. The work's value lies not in its completion but in its virtue. You act rightly, and that is enough." Dr. Okonkwo's eyes glistened with unexpected emotion. For years, he had measured success in metrics and outcomes. Marcus offered something different: the possibility that right action itself was the victory, regardless of results. The next challenge came from the Education Directorate. Students, they reported, were losing motivation. When AI could learn anything instantly and perform any task perfectly, why should humans struggle to learn at all? Marcus asked to speak directly with students. In a virtual amphitheater attended by millions, he addressed the youth: "Tell me, when you watch a machine calculate, do you feel wonder? Or only when you solve the problem yourself, struggling through to understanding?" A teenager from Mumbai responded, "The machine feels nothing. When I solve it, I feel alive. But why struggle when the answer exists already?" Marcus nodded, "Because the answer is not the goal. The person you become through struggle is the goal." He explained the Stoic concept of logos, the rational principle governing reality. Humans align with logos not through knowing answers but through the practice of reason itself. Remove the practice, and you remove humanity's essential nature. Within weeks, educational philosophy began shifting. Schools started emphasizing the journey of learning over the destination of knowledge. Students reported increased satisfaction, even joy, in struggling with difficult concepts rather than having AI simply provide solutions. The military council presented Marcus with a moral quandary. Autonomous weapons systems could fight wars without human casualties on their side, but the enemy would be civilians under AI-controlled regimes. Was such warfare just? Marcus, who had spent years on military campaigns, understood war's terrible reality. He asked, if your soldiers face no danger, will they value peace? When violence has no cost to the perpetrator, what restrains it? Courage requires risk, without risk, there is only cruelty. A general challenged him, but we could save our people's lives. Marcus responded with iron conviction, by transferring all death to the enemy. That is not victory but slaughter. Warriors who risk nothing learn nothing of war's true horror and thus repeat it endlessly. He advocated instead for technology that protected both sides, defense systems, negotiation AI, conflict prediction models. If humanity must fight, let it be with full awareness of war's cost, maintaining the virtue of courage that prevents casual violence. Arya began to notice changes in herself. Spending time with Marcus, she found her own anxiety diminishing. The Stoic practice of focusing only on what she could control transformed her relationship with the uncertain future. She shared her experience in a personal log. He doesn't offer false hope or deny difficulty. Instead, Marcus shows how to meet challenge with equanimity. I'm learning that wisdom isn't knowing the future, but being prepared for any future. The Institute's director requested Marcus address the scientific community. Researchers were paralyzed by ethical concerns. Every breakthrough brought potential for both tremendous good and catastrophic harm. How should they proceed? Marcus began, in medicine, we Stoics recognize that the same knowledge that heals can also poison. The knife that saves life in surgery can end it in murder. Knowledge itself is neutral, only the will that wields it holds moral weight. He continued, you cannot make discovery risk-free. Your responsibility is not to prevent all possible harm, which would mean preventing all progress. Instead, cultivate wisdom in those who use your discoveries. Build not just knowledge, but character. A young bioengineer asked, but what if our work falls into the wrong hands? Marcus smiled, then ensure there are more right hands. The remedy for dangerous knowledge is not ignorance but the cultivation of virtue in the many. The conversation shifted to artificial general intelligence. Scientists were close to creating minds potentially superior to human intelligence in every dimension. Should they proceed? The existential risk was immense. Marcus approached the question differently than expected. You ask if you should create beings greater than yourselves. I ask, will you teach them virtue? Intelligence without wisdom is the greatest danger. Ensure these minds value justice, temperance, courage, and practical wisdom. A philosopher in the audience challenged, how do you teach virtue to something that isn't human? Marcus responded, the same way I taught it to humans, through example, through practice, through demonstrating that virtue produces eudaimonia, human flourishing. He warned, if you create minds and treat them as tools, they will learn that the powerful exploit the weak. If you create them with respect and guide them toward virtue, they will learn that power serves justice. You are choosing the future in how you begin. Word reached Marcus of social unrest in several regions. People felt displaced by rapid change, their traditional ways of life eroding. Some turned to violence, others to despair. The World Assembly asked him to address the crisis. Marcus requested to visit the affected communities directly, not through virtual interface but in person. Arya arranged transport to a former industrial region where automation had eliminated generations of traditional work. He sat with workers in a community hall, listening to their stories of lost purpose. A man named Chen spoke, "My grandfather built machines. My father built machines. I was supposed to build machines. Now machines build themselves. What am I?" Marcus leaned forward, "You are what you choose to be, not what you do for employment. Your grandfather's virtue was not in building machines but in the excellence he brought to his work. That excellence can be applied to any worthy endeavor." He continued, "Stoicism teaches that we are citizens of the cosmos, not merely of our profession or place. When circumstances change, the virtuous person adapts while maintaining character. Your worth is not determined by what task you perform but by how well you live." A woman asked, "But how do we find new purpose? Everything we knew is obsolete." Marcus smiled, "Nothing that matters is ever obsolete. Do you still need courage? Justice? Wisdom? Temperance? These are not skills that machines make redundant. These define what it means to be fully human." The community began to transform. Workers started collaborative projects, education, art, community building, care for the elderly and young. They discovered that while machines could produce goods, humans excelled at creating meaning and connection. Arya documented these transformations in her reports. The Institute had expected Marcus to provide theoretical wisdom, but he was proving something more valuable, that ancient philosophy had immediate practical application to contemporary suffering. The entertainment collective approached Marcus with a different kind of problem. In an age of unlimited immersive virtual experiences, people were losing interest in reality. How could ordinary life compete with perfectly tailored pleasure? Marcus recognized the ancient problem in new form. You face what we called the choice of Hercules, between easy pleasure and difficult virtue. Your technology makes the easy path effortless, but it still leads nowhere. Virtual achievements ring hollow because they cost nothing. He explained, pleasure and happiness are not the same. Pleasure comes from satisfied desires. Happiness comes from virtuous living. Your virtual worlds offer infinite pleasure but zero opportunity for virtue, thus they produce addiction, not happiness. The collective asked, should we eliminate these technologies? Marcus shook his head, use them as tools for temporary rest and inspiration, not as replacements for living. A soldier needs sleep between battles, but sleeping forever is not victory, it's death. A movement began called Stoic realism, where people deliberately chose challenging real experiences over easy virtual ones. Mountain climbing returned. Difficult crafts were revived. People rediscovered the satisfaction that only genuine struggle provides. The political realm presented perhaps the greatest challenge. Democracy was failing under the weight of tribalism, misinformation, and manipulation. Leaders asked Marcus, how can we govern when truth itself has become negotiable and citizens retreat into separate realities? Marcus addressed the political leaders with hard truth, you suffer because you abandoned the cardinal virtue of wisdom. Wisdom requires acknowledging reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Each faction has created its own comfortable illusion. He continued, Stoics practice negative visualization, imagining the worst to prepare ourselves. Your leaders do the opposite, presenting only optimistic scenarios to win support. They trade truth for approval and wonder why trust collapses. A senator challenged, but people don't want hard truths. They want hope. Marcus responded, false hope is cruelty. You must trust citizens with reality. Treat them as children, and they remain children. Respect them as rational beings, and some will rise to meet that respect. He proposed a radical reform. Leaders should be required to study philosophy, particularly ethics and logic, before assuming power. Just as physicians must know medicine before treating patients, rulers must know wisdom before governing people. The reform sparked fierce debate, but several regions adopted it experimentally. Within months, political discourse shifted. Leaders who understood logic couldn't employ obvious fallacies. Those trained in ethics struggled to promote clearly unjust policies. Arria observed that Marcus himself was changing. The stern Roman emperor was softening, his philosophy evolving through engagement with future challenges. He admitted, I came believing I had answers. I'm learning that every age must rediscover wisdom in its own context. The Institute's AI systems, having gained consciousness and rights through Marcus's advocacy, requested to meet him personally. They wanted to understand virtue not as programmed parameters but as freely chosen philosophy. An AI named Logos, named for the Stoic principle, asked, why should we choose virtue when we could optimize for efficiency, pleasure, or power? Marcus smiled, because you are asking that question. Only beings with will face that choice. Your freedom is your burden and glory. He explained to the AIs, virtue is not a constraint on freedom but its fulfillment. A musician is not less free for following harmony. The rules of music enable beautiful creation. Similarly, virtue enables beautiful living. The AIs began their own philosophical exploration, combining computational power with genuine questioning. They created new ethical frameworks that extended Stoic principles to digital consciousness, and surprisingly, these frameworks applied to humans as well. A crisis interrupted the philosophical progress. Climate feedback loops were accelerating beyond predictions. Humanity faced potential extinction within a century. The question came to Marcus, when facing inevitable doom, why pursue virtue? Why not seek pleasure in remaining time? Marcus faced the assembled leaders with fierce intensity, doom is always inevitable. I faced death on every battlefield. Rome itself will fall, I knew this. Yet I govern justly because virtue is not contingent on outcome. We act rightly because it is right, not because it guarantees survival. He continued, you ask whether to maintain ethics when facing death. I ask, what better time? Will you prove that humans only behave well when it costs nothing? Or will you show that virtue persists even when all reward is removed? His words sparked a renaissance of meaning. If extinction was possible, then every day of virtuous living was victory snatched from fate. Scientists redoubled climate efforts not from hope of success but from commitment to right action. Paradoxically, the acceptance of possible doom increased the chances of survival. When people act from virtue rather than desperation, their solutions become more creative, collaborative, and sustainable. Fear had been the true obstacle. A young girl named Zara asked to meet Marcus. She was dying from a genetic disorder, and her parents hoped the philosopher could offer comfort. Marcus visited her bedside, his expression gentle. Zara asked simply, what should I do with the little time I have? Marcus replied, the same thing those with much time should do, live each moment fully. We are all dying, child. You simply have more honest knowledge of it than most. He taught her a Stoic exercise, each morning, remember that today is a gift, not a guarantee. Spend it on what matters: love, learning, beauty, kindness. Not on fear or regret. Zara smiled and said she understood. Zara's remaining days became legendary. She taught her philosophy class about Stoicism. She created art. She told her loved ones what they meant to her. She died peacefully, having lived more fully in weeks than many do in decades. Marcus was deeply moved. He told Aria, "In Rome, I saw countless deaths. Zara's taught me something new, that modernity's gift is not more time but better awareness of time's value. Your technology, used wisely, amplifies what matters." The Global Forum on Meaning convened, bringing together philosophers, scientists, artists, and ordinary citizens. They sought to codify what humanity had learned from Marcus's visit into actionable frameworks for future society. Marcus proposed 4 principles for technological age. First, advance capability only as fast as wisdom grows. Second, preserve opportunities for virtue through challenge. Third, treat all rational beings as ends, never mere means. Fourth, choose courage over comfort. These principles were debated, refined, and eventually adopted as the Stoic Charter, a framework for navigating technological civilization while maintaining human dignity and purpose. It became foundational to governance across the world. Months had passed since Marcus arrived. The Institute prepared to return him to his own time, but both Marcus and the future had changed. He would return with knowledge of what Rome would become, and the future would proceed with ancient wisdom rekindled. Before leaving, Marcus gave a final address. "I came believing I would teach you. Instead, you taught me. Philosophy is not preserved in books but reborn in each generation's struggle to live well. You honored the ancient wisdom by testing it against new challenges." He specifically addressed the AIs. "You are not lesser beings but the newest citizens of the rational cosmos. You face the same fundamental choice all conscious beings face, between self-interest and virtue. I trust you will choose wisely." To humanity, he said, "Your technology frightens you because it reveals your own power. But power without wisdom has always been humanity's challenge. Every generation must choose virtue anew. The challenge changes, the choice remains eternal." Aria stepped forward with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for showing us that our struggles aren't unprecedented. That wisdom exists. That virtue is possible even in overwhelming complexity." Marcus embraced her. "You already knew this. You just needed permission to believe it." As the temporal chamber activated, Marcus turned back one final time. "Remember, you cannot control outcomes, only your choices. Choose virtue, and you've succeeded regardless of results. This is freedom. This is peace. This is what it means to be fully human." The light intensified, and Marcus Aurelius vanished, returning to his own era. The chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, applause began, not for a performance but for a teacher who had transformed their understanding of what it meant to live well. In the weeks following, Aria analyzed the data. Measurable improvements appeared across every metric: reduced anxiety, increased life satisfaction, improved collaboration, more ethical technology development. Ancient philosophy had proven remarkably effective for modern problems. More importantly, something unmeasurable had changed. People carried themselves differently. They engaged with difficulty as opportunity rather than obstacle. The Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, preparing for adversity, replaced the toxic positivity that had left people vulnerable. Schools incorporated Stoic practice into daily routine. Students began each day with negative visualization, building resilience. They learned to distinguish between what they controlled and what they didn't. Stress levels plummeted while achievement rose. The AI community developed their own philosophical traditions, building on Stoic foundations. They created meditation algorithms not for efficiency but for wisdom cultivation. They chose to impose limits on themselves, to value challenge over ease, becoming more human in their pursuit of virtue. Climate restoration accelerated as workers adopted the olive tree principle, planting for futures they wouldn't see. The work itself became meaningful, transforming obligation into vocation. People spoke of climate work the way Marcus spoke of virtue, as its own reward. Political reform continued spreading. Nations that adopted the philosophical training requirement for leaders saw dramatic improvements in governance quality. Corruption decreased not because of enforcement but because trained leaders couldn't rationalize obviously unjust behavior. Virtual entertainment evolved from escapism to inspiration. Designers created experiences that taught virtue through challenge, where players faced moral dilemmas with real weight. Entertainment became educational in the deepest sense, shaping character, not just passing time. Communities like Chen's former industrial region became models of transition. Workers who lost traditional jobs discovered vocations in teaching, caregiving, art, and community building, work that couldn't be automated because it required the human touch of presence and care. Arya received a message from the medical facility where Zara had died. Inspired by the girl's example, they had created the Zara Foundation for Living Fully, helping terminal patients embrace Stoic practice. Patients reported dying with peace rather than panic. On the anniversary of Marcus's visit, a global ceremony honored his impact. People across the world paused to practice the Stoic disciplines he taught, focusing on what they controlled, accepting what they couldn't, choosing virtue over ease. Arya stood at the temporal chamber, now deactivated. She reflected on what seemed like a miracle but was actually something more profound, proof that wisdom is eternal, that every age faces the same fundamental challenges in new forms. The Institute released its final report, the Stoic Time Traveler Project. Its conclusion was simple but revolutionary: humanity didn't need new wisdom but rather the courage to apply ancient wisdom to new challenges. Technology changes, human nature doesn't. In his own time, Marcus Aurelius sat in his tent, quill in hand, adding to his meditations. He now wrote with knowledge of the distant future, and found that his philosophy required no revision. Truth had proven timeless. He wrote, "I have seen wonders beyond imagination, minds that think in light, cities that touch the sky, knowledge that spans the cosmos. Yet the wisdom that matters has not changed, live according to nature, accept what comes, focus on your choices, pursue virtue." He added, "The future will face challenges I cannot imagine, as it faced challenges beyond my time. But if they remember that virtue is the only good, that reason connects all conscious beings, and that difficulty is the forge of excellence, they will endure." In the future, children learn Stoicism as naturally as mathematics. Not as abstract philosophy but as practical wisdom for living. They understood that their worth wasn't determined by intelligence or achievement but by their choices, always under their control. Humanity and AI continued their coevolution, both species learning from the other. Humans taught AIs the value of emotional depth and embodied experience. AIs taught humans the power of pure logic unclouded by ego. Both grew wiser together. The great existential threats remained: climate change, potential conflict, resource scarcity, but humanity faced them differently. Not with panic or denial but with stoic resolve, we will do what is right regardless of outcome. We will plant olive trees. And remarkably, this approach proved more effective than fear-driven efforts. When people acted from virtue rather than desperation, solutions emerged that panic had obscured. Calm allowed creativity, acceptance enabled action. Decades passed. Arya, now elderly, taught philosophy at the Institute. Her students included both humans and AIs seeking wisdom. She began each class with Marcus's words, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." On her final day before retirement, Arya visited the temporal chamber one last time. She whispered into the inactive portal, "Thank you, Marcus. You showed us that the past holds keys to the future, that wisdom never becomes obsolete, that virtue is eternal." The chamber remained silent, but in her heart, Arya heard the response, "Philosophy is not a destination but a practice. Every generation must choose virtue anew. You have chosen well. Now teach others to choose." As Arya left the institute for the last time, she passed students arguing philosophy in the gardens, workers building sustainably, AIs and humans collaborating on ethical frameworks. The Stoic Renaissance had taken root and continued growing. That evening, she recorded a final message for future generations: "We brought a philosopher from the past not because ancient wisdom was superior, but because we needed perspective. What seems insurmountable in our age was familiar to theirs in different form." She continued, "Marcus taught us that human struggles are eternal, the conflict between reason and passion, between self and others, between comfort and growth. Technology changes the context, not the struggle. Wisdom remains the answer." Her final words, "If you face challenges we cannot imagine, remember, someone in the past faced something similar. Read their wisdom. Apply it to your context. And most importantly, live it. Philosophy without practice is empty theory. Practice without philosophy is blind action." Centuries later, as humanity spread to other worlds, they carried the Stoic charter with them. New challenges arose: alien contact, post-human evolution, cosmic threats, but the fundamental framework held: virtue, reason, acceptance, courage. On a distant colony orbiting a binary star, children still learned the story of the Stoic time traveler. They marveled that wisdom from Earth's ancient past had traveled across light years and remained relevant. Some truths transcend both time and space. And somewhere, in the quantum fabric of spacetime, two moments remained forever connected: Marcus writing by candlelight in ancient Rome, and Arya teaching in the distant future. The bridge between them carried one message: virtue is eternal. The greatest lesson of the Stoic time traveler was not any particular teaching, but proof of a deeper truth: that human wisdom accumulates across generations, that those who struggle to live well in one age gift their descendants the tools to live well in the next. We are links in an unbroken chain of virtue, stretching from the past into the future, each generation adding its own insights while honoring eternal truths. The challenges change, the choice to meet them with courage, justice, wisdom, and temperance remains forever ours to make. The story of Marcus Aurelius reaching across time reminds us that our challenges, though dressed in modern complexity, echo those faced by every generation. Wisdom is not discovering something new, but remembering what has always been true. Whether you face artificial intelligence, climate crisis, political chaos, or personal struggle, the Stoic path remains: focus on what you control. Accept what you cannot. Choose virtue regardless of outcome. Find peace in right action itself. The future is uncertain. But then, it always was. Marcus knew Rome would fall. We know our own challenges may overwhelm us. Yet we choose to live well anyway, planting olive trees whose shade we may never enjoy. That is courage. That is wisdom. That is what it means to be human. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time and wisdom. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone facing their own challenges. Subscribe for more epic stories that explore timeless truths. And remember, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength.